You think stillness is possible. You imagine a moment frozen, untouched, motionless, a lake at dawn, a desk in your room, a single atom waiting silently. You are wrong. You think you can remove all motion, all energy, all disturbance. You think stillness is a natural state. You imagine reality obeys your intuition. It doesn't. Even the emptiest space hums. Even the coldest ice vibrates. Even the tiniest particle refuses your expectation of peace. You think it's simple. You think it can be quiet. You think it can stop. It can't, not ever, not anywhere, not in any sense you can truly understand. You imagine a book lying on a table. You imagine it not moving at all. You imagine the table itself, stable, solid, unmoving. You imagine the world as a series of snapshots, frozen and calm. This is wrong. Even in the most mundane scene, nothing is truly at rest. The book seems still, the table seems still, your eyes fix on a wall that doesn't appear to shift. Yet, what your senses tell you is only a convenient illusion. It hides layers of activity you cannot see. The surface that feels smooth is a dance of atoms, vibrating, jostling, never pausing. The molecules in the wood, in the ink, in your skin, all tremble with energy. You might object, but I can see it. I can touch it. It's still. That is not the point. Seeing, touching, perceiving. These are filters. They smooth over chaos. What you call stillness is simply motion too small, too fast, or too subtle for your senses. But it is there, always, and it is not just a matter of heat. Even if you could remove all warmth, if you could somehow reach absolute zero, an extreme physicists can approach but never truly attain, the motion would not stop. Something deeper prevents it, something fundamental. Nature does not allow matter to be perfectly calm. Consider this. Your intuition treats objects as if they have a single, fixed location. You think of the book as here, the table as there. Yet even this mental image is flawed. The atoms making up these objects occupy regions of probability. They are smeared across space in ways you cannot see, in ways your mind resists imagining. The world you believe to be solid, stable, and still is, at its core, uncertain and restless. Even more unsettling, what about empty space? You may think stillness exists where nothing exists, but space itself vibrates, hums, and pulses. Nothingness, in its truest form, is a storm of potential, a field of constant activity. There is no place, no corner of reality untouched by movement. So when you picture stillness, remember, it is an act of imagination, not a fact of physics. You cling to the comfort of frozen moments because your senses demand them, because your brain craves certainty, but those moments are illusions. Peeling back the layers of perception reveals a universe that refuses rest. This is the first step in understanding why nothing can ever be perfectly still. The everyday world you trust is a carefully curated lie. The motion you cannot see is the first truth you must confront. You still believe that solids are solid. You still believe that ice is motionless, that metal is stable, that a table or a chair is unmoving. You imagine that the smaller you go, the quieter it gets. That is wrong. Everything vibrates, everything moves. Everything, even when it seems frozen, is alive with a restless energy you cannot feel. Close your eyes and think of a single ice cube. It appears still, crystalline, perfect, but look closer. The water molecules inside are jostling, shifting slightly in place. They rotate, they vibrate. The colder it gets, the slower the motion, but never zero. There is no escape from this incessant dance. Even at room temperature, Every object is a symphony of vibrations. Each atom, bound to its neighbors, oscillates as if tethered to invisible springs. You cannot stop it. You cannot slow it enough to see it vanish. The table under your hand, the book in your lap, even the wall you lean against, all are trembling, oscillating in a precise chaos. You feel calm because your senses average over trillions of atoms. Your mind smooths the motion into stillness. But the reality is motion at every scale. You might think of cooling things down, freezing them, trying to remove the heat that drives this motion. You imagine that removing temperature removes activity. This is wrong too. Thermal motion is only the most obvious. Even if you could reach absolute zero, something science approaches but cannot achieve, the vibrations do not disappear entirely. Quantum physics ensures a residual jitter remains. Every atom has a minimal energy it cannot shed. Every particle refuses to rest completely. Let's imagine a thought experiment. Picture a single atom trapped in a cage, isolated from all heat, all disturbance. You imagine it frozen, unmoving, obedient to your intuition, but you cannot. The atom still shakes, a trembling ghost of motion. Even in perfect isolation, the laws of nature demand fluctuation. Motion is not a consequence of imperfection. It is a fundamental rule, and it is not just atoms. Molecules, crystals, even solids you believe to be rigid, behave like flexible structures at microscopic scales. The rigidity you see is a convenient fiction of perception. Nature has no interest in obeying your mental pictures. So now you must begin to let go of the idea that stillness exists in matter. You must unlearn the comforting notion that objects can ever truly stop. What seems calm is merely averaged chaos. What seems silent is a constant vibration. The world is never quiet. The world is never frozen. It refuses your expectation. The first illusion, stillness in objects, is shattered. What remains is a universe alive with motion, even in its most solid, most crystalline forms. And as we move deeper, the motion will not only persist, it will become stranger, more profound, and more unsettling. You believe that if you look closely enough, you can pin reality down. You think you could, in principle, freeze an object, locate it exactly, measure its speed perfectly. You imagine that the universe will bend to your precision. That is wrong. At the smallest scales, your intuition fails spectacularly. Classical ideas, the world as solid, predictable, still collapse. Quantum mechanics tells us that particles do not sit still. They do not have precise positions and velocities simultaneously. They smear across space. They jitter in ways that defy logic. Consider a thought experiment. You isolate a single electron. You imagine it as a tiny billiard ball, sitting at rest in space. You try to measure it. The more precisely you locate it, the less you know about its motion. The more you try to pin down its momentum, the less certain you become of its position. This is not a technical limitation of instruments. This is fundamental. This is nature refusing to obey your intuition. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle is a revolt against stillness. It is the law that forbids the absolute rest of matter. It whispers quietly that no particle may ever be perfectly calm, no atom completely at rest, no quantum system fully predictable. The world does not allow you to freeze it, not even in thought, not even in your most controlled experiment. And it is stranger than you think. Even empty potentials, regions where no particle seems to exist, cannot escape this motion. An electron in its lowest energy state, the so-called ground state, still has energy. It vibrates, it moves. It cannot be stopped. This is sometimes called zero-point energy. Zero, yes, but not still. Nature never rests. You might think that by removing all external disturbance, by isolating a particle perfectly, you could calm it. You imagine the universe bowing to your will, finally yielding to stillness. But the quantum world laughs at this idea. The very act of trying to measure, to observe, introduces uncertainty, motion, and fluctuation. Observation itself is a source of disturbance. Stillness is not merely forbidden. It is impossible in principle, even more unsettling. This is not rare. Every atom, every molecule, every electron, everywhere, in every material, is subject to these rules. The jitter, the motion, the refusal to obey your classical expectation is constant. It is not a small effect you can ignore. It is built into the architecture of reality. So, by the time you look beyond the visible, by the time you confront the microscopic, the illusion of calm shatters completely. The motions you cannot see dominate what you thought was stable. Every attempt to stop nature's dance only exposes deeper layers of revolt. Every object, every particle, every corner of the microscopic world refuses to obey stillness. At this point, your intuition is almost entirely dismantled. Matter is never at rest. Energy cannot be zero, and what seems solid, what seems still, is merely the veil over a restless quantum world. You begin to see the universe is not just alive with motion. It is compelled fundamentally to move. You imagine empty space as calm. You imagine a vacuum as a void of perfect stillness, a region untouched by motion or energy. That is wrong. Even the emptiest regions of the universe are seething with activity. This is not a metaphor, this is physics. Empty space is never empty. It is alive with tiny, ephemeral fluctuations, bubbles of energy that appear and vanish in an instant. The vacuum is not a backdrop for matter. It is a restless sea beneath all things, shaping reality in ways you cannot perceive. Picture a perfectly empty box, devoid of atoms, devoid of particles. You think of it as silent, motionless. You imagine that if nothing exists inside, nothing happens. But in truth, the vacuum is bubbling with zero-point energy. Particles pop into existence and vanish, fields oscillate, and the very fabric of space trembles. Nothingness is a storm. You might object, but these effects are tiny, they don't matter. Yet the universe is sensitive to the subtle. These vacuum fluctuations influence atoms, light, and even the forces that shape galaxies. The Casimir effect, a measurable phenomenon, arises directly from the restless activity of empty space. Two plates, placed incredibly close together, are pushed by a force generated solely from the vacuum itself. What seems empty is exerting influence. What seems still is shaping reality. Consider the philosophical implication. If even emptiness is never still, then stillness is nowhere, not in matter, not in vacuum, not in any corner of existence. There is no absolute calm. The concept of rest, the notion of a moment without motion, is meaningless. Every attempt to define nothing as peaceful is a lie told by your senses and your intuition, and it becomes stranger. Space itself is a medium for fluctuations that can, under certain conditions, produce real particles. The vacuum is not just active, it is generative. It is a crucible of motion from which matter can emerge. Even nothing obeys the same rules that forbid stillness in matter. Motion is a law, not an accident. Now reflect. What you assumed about reality, about calm, about emptiness, about the possibility of perfect rest. is collapsing. Matter vibrates, particles jitter, and empty space pulses. Motion is not a property of things, it is a property of existence itself. It is fundamental, unavoidable in principle. So when you imagine stillness, you imagine a state that does not exist anywhere. The universe is a perpetual dance, a silent storm, an unceasing pulse. Nothing sits, nothing waits, nothing stops, and the deeper you look, the less familiar the world becomes. This is the fourth layer of intuition. Destroyed, you no longer merely doubt the stillness of matter. You must now confront the absurdity of believing in calm anywhere in existence. The universe refuses it, at every scale, in every form. You still cling to the idea that systems can rest. You imagine a pendulum stopped, a glass of water unmoving, a crystal frozen in perfect equilibrium. That is wrong. Even if you could eliminate temperature, isolate a particle, or remove external disturbances, systems are never truly stable. Motion is inevitable because perfect balance is forbidden. Nature does not permit a complete halt. Even the quietest, most controlled system carries an intrinsic instability that will always assert itself. Think of a ball at the very top of a hill. You imagine that placing it exactly at the peak will make it stay there forever. You imagine stillness, but the universe has other plans. Tiny fluctuations, imperceptible vibrations, quantum jitters, microscopic disturbances push it off balance. It rolls, motion emerges from the slightest instability. No system can resist this. Perfect equilibrium is a fantasy. This is not just mechanical. Even in atoms and molecules, the energy that prevents absolute stillness ensures that nothing can occupy a minima. Energy state perfectly. Attempting to freeze a system introduces tension. The very act of constraining it generates forces, fluctuations, and motion. The more you try to stop it, the more restless it becomes. The arrow of instability points in only one direction, motion. Now scale this up. Systems composed of countless particles, solids, liquids, gases cannot escape this principle. Thermodynamics guarantees it. Entropy ensures it. The attempt to achieve perfect stillness is an attempt to resist the natural flow of energy, and that resistance is doomed to fail. Even the coldest, quietest corner of a lab contains microscopic motion, invisible yet relentless. You might think of absolute zero, the theoretical state where thermal motion ceases. But even there, quantum fluctuations persist. The system cannot rest. The arrow of instability is built into the foundation of reality. The world resists stasis, not because of imperfection, not because of interference, but because stillness is forbidden at the deepest level. This changes how you see calm. There is no ultimate equilibrium, no perfect cessation, no final peace in matter or energy. The attempt to stop motion does not succeed. It simply redirects it, forcing motion into subtler, less visible forms. The universe does not pause for you. It does not yield. It persists, restless, active, and alive with fluctuation. By now, your old intuition is almost entirely dismantled. Matter cannot rest. Energy cannot vanish. Even the vacuum, even the nothing, is unstable. Every system is compelled to move, compelled to fluctuate, compelled to resist the stillness your mind demands. The arrow of instability is unidirectional. It points from illusion to reality, from calm to motion, from intuitive peace to unavoidable unrest. Stillness is an impossibility. Your sense of equilibrium is a convenience, a mental comfort, a soft lie against the harsh truth. The universe refuses to sit still. You might wonder, if nothing can ever be perfectly still, what does that mean for the world you thought you understood? The consequences are subtle at first, then deeply unsettling. Every measurement you make, every prediction you attempt, rests on assumptions of stability. You imagine objects at rest, empty space calm, systems in equilibrium. You imagine time as a smooth backdrop, a sequence of static snapshots. That is wrong. Because motion is unavoidable, predictability is limited. Even when you account for the visible, you cannot escape the invisible. Particles jitter, fields fluctuate, systems teeter on the edge of instability. The very notion of a precise state becomes an approximation. Reality is not a stage on which events unfold with clockwork precision. It is a restless canvas, constantly reshaped by motion you cannot eliminate. Time itself takes on a new character. If matter, energy, and space are never still, then the flow of events is not merely sequential, it is emergent. The clockwork intuition you rely on breaks down. The present is never static. The past is never fixed. The future is never fully determined. Motion underpins everything, and with it, uncertainty becomes a fundamental property of reality. Even the world you consider solid is a shifting landscape. Mountains erode, rivers flow, ice melts and reforms, molecules dance, and atoms jitter endlessly. The macroscopic calm you perceive is a fragile veneer over a chaos that never sleeps. The apparent stability of tables, chairs, and walls is the cumulative effect of countless restless parts averaging into a semblance of stillness. And yet, this instability is not weakness, it is structure. The restless energy, the unavoidable motion, is what allows complexity, life, and change. Systems evolve, stars burn, planets orbit. Motion is the engine of existence. Stillness is forbidden not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Without constant fluctuation, the universe would be inert, incapable of forming patterns, incapable of sustaining reality as we know it. So the consequences are profound. Absolute rest is impossible. Absolute certainty is impossible. Even the emptiest spaces are dynamic. Every attempt to impose stasis is met with resistance. Nature does not pause. Nature does not yield. And your intuition, which demanded calm and permanence, must be abandoned. You now begin to perceive a universe that is simultaneously fragile and unyielding, restless and structured. Motion is the rule, not the exception. Stillness is the illusion, the comforting story we tell ourselves to make sense of a world that refuses to obey our expectations. You have been taught to think of reality as stable. You have been taught that objects rest, that space is empty, that the world is predictable. You have been trained to rely on your senses, your intuition, your imagination. You have clung to the idea that stillness is possible, that calm is achievable, that order can exist in isolation. That is wrong. By now, the layers of illusion have been stripped away. Matter trembles, atoms vibrate, electrons refuse to settle. Even empty space is restless, a field of energy that never ceases, a canvas of constant fluctuation. Systems cannot remain in equilibrium. Instability is built into the very structure of reality. Every attempt to stop motion, to create stillness, to impose calm, is doomed to fail. And here is the collapse. If nothing can ever be perfectly still, then stillness itself is meaningless. It is not just rare, it is impossible, it does not exist, not in matter, not in space, not in time. Every notion of frozen reality, every comforting snapshot your mind creates, is a convenient fiction. The universe refuses it. Absolute calm is forbidden. Absolute rest is a myth. Now consider the philosophical consequences. If everything is in motion, if every corner of reality vibrates, fluctuates, and resists certainty, then permanence is an illusion. Stability is conditional, fleeting, fragile. The world you perceive as solid, predictable, and reliable is only a temporary pattern formed from countless restless parts. Your concept of control is an approximation, your sense of certainty a shadow of understanding. Even time, that most familiar of companions, is reframed. The flow of events is not a smooth river. It is a restless cascade, emerging from fluctuations at every level. The present is never fixed, the past never completely certain, the future never fully determined. Motion underpins reality so completely that nothing, not even the most settled, moment is immune to it. Yet this collapse is not despair, it is awe. The universe is not a silent machine, not a frozen painting, not a clockwork stage. It is a living, trembling, infinite dance. Motion is not a flaw, it is the foundation of existence. The vibrations, the fluctuations, the unavoidable instability are what allow matter to form, stars to shine, life to emerge, and consciousness to perceive. You must now confront a truth deeper than science, deeper than physics, deeper than perception itself. Reality is never still. It never pauses, it never obeys intuition, it never submits to expectation. The world is a constant act of becoming, a perpetual movement that refuses to be pinned down. And this is the only stillness there is, the realization that stillness does not exist. The collapse is complete. Your familiar mental anchors, solid matter, empty space, frozen time have dissolved. All that remains is motion. All that remains is vibration. All that remains is the relentless, unyielding refusal of reality to pause for your convenience. And in that refusal lies a strange serenity, for when you accept that nothing is still, you see the universe as it truly is, infinite, dynamic, unpredictable, alive. And there, in the tremor beneath all things, in the jitter of atoms and the pulse of empty space, you encounter a profound awe, a reality more intricate, more beautiful, more terrifying than any static snapshot could ever convey. Stillness is impossible, and in that impossibility you glimpse the true nature of existence.